Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to our next video lesson. We're going to be creating an application that allows us to, or allows the user that is, to enter their first and their last name, to enter in the hourly wage and then the hours worked. And what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the regular pay, the overtime pay, and the total pay. So let me zoom in a little bit here so we can get a better view of this. So here's what our form is going to look like when we initially run it. And then over here, this is what it's going to look like after the user has clicked the Calculate Wage button. So again, as you can see, if the person works 55 hours, say for example, and if they get $10 an hour, well, when they click Calculate Wage, they're going to get a regular pay, an overtime pay, and then the total pay is just simply the addition of those two. Now the one thing that we want to notice is this. The person's only going to get overtime pay if this hours worked is greater than 40. Right? So if they work 40 hours, overtime pay should be 0. But if they worked 41 hours, 40 of those hours are regular pay, 1 of those hours is overtime pay, and then of course the addition of these two is going to be placed over here in total pay. And then also on the bottom we want to personalize this by saying whatever the person's first name is, we'll put it over here and say your total pay is, and then we'll get this value, place it over here. Again, you'll also notice that there's a currency style, so there's a dollar symbol, decimal, 2 numbers after the decimal point. So we want the currency or the monetary amount to be in a currency style. Okay. All right. So that's what we're supposed to do. And let's take a look at some of the user requirements. Okay, here it is. Assume that hours worked over 40 is considered overtime. Overtime pay is an additional time and a half. Right. So we're going to use the standard industry definition of overtime pay, which they'll typically give you time and a half. Software requirements. Okay, clicking the Calculate Wage button determines the regular, overtime, and total pay. These values must be displayed in 3-dimensional labels with a currency style, as you see over here in figure number 2. It says use the following pseudocode to determine whether, or to determine rather, the regular and overtime pay. So the idea is this: we're going to use the if statement, and we're going to say if the hours worked is less than or equal to 40, then your regular pay is simply equal to the hours worked times the hourly wage, and overtime pay is 0. But if this is not a true statement, if hours worked is not less than or equal to 40, then we assume that you're working overtime. So then your regular pay will simply be your first 40 hours times your hourly wage. The overtime pay is going to be your hours worked minus 40. So let's say that I worked 55 hours, right? Well, 55 minus 40, that's going to be 15. So 15 hours overtime times time and a half, that's what that 1.5 is, times however much I get per hour. That will be my overtime pay. And then of course I give you a listing of the various names that you're supposed to use for the several of the controls on your form. And then we're going to declare real number variable, the following real number variables local to the BTN submit click procedure, and those are the items down here. Okay, so let's focus on the graphical user interface at first. Let me zoom in a little bit so I can get a good view of what this thing's going to look like, and I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio. And let's go ahead and create a project. And again, this is going to be a Visual Basic Windows Form application. And so we're going to say this is VB Lab 11 project. And we'll click OK. So after a second, the form comes up. Let me go ahead and drag and drop a button to the form. And let's also drag and drop a label and also a text box. Okay, let me open up the Properties panel and tack this down so it doesn't disappear. We go back to our document. It looks like we have Wage Calculator is the title for the form, so let me change that first. So the text property is going to say Wage Calculator. Switch back over here. Looks like I have a label that says first name, so let me take this label, move it to the upper left hand corner, and change that to the words first name. And then underneath that it looks like I have a text box, so I'll just take this text box over here and place it, let's say right here. Let me move this button out of the way, it's interfering with how I'm placing the text box. And actually it looks like the text box is a little bit bigger, so I'm going to increase the length of this to, let's say for example right here. Well, I better do the same thing for the form, so let me increase the size of the form here. I'm then going to take these two, the label and the text box, Control C and Control V as in Victor for copy and paste, and I'll move them right over here, say for example, and this needs to change to last name. So I'll type last name for the text property. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 labels. Then I also have 2 text boxes, and these are also labels with a fixed 3D format. So let's go ahead and take one of these labels here and copy and paste. Let's move it to approximately right here, say for example. Now that first label is supposed to say hourly wage. Okay, so for the text, I'll type hourly wage. And let me just take this next label, copy and paste it. I'm moving it to a certain position approximately, right? I'm not gonna have it in this position definitively until I have all the labels and text boxes set. So let's see, hours worked would be the next. Hours worked would be the next text. Okay, and then we have regular pay. So let me take this, copy and paste it. Regular pay. Overtime pay is the next item. So I'll move this over here, and overtime pay. And we also have total pay. So I'll change this to total pay. All right, beneath it looks like we have 2 text boxes. So let me take this text box, I'll copy and paste that. I'll move it underneath hourly wage, say for example something like this. Let me resize this to approximately, let's say that size right here. Let me move this button out of the way. Maybe a little bit bigger than the label, something like this. Okay. Well, now I can go ahead and take this text box and copy and paste this. Again, I'll just place it right next to it, something like this. Now, the remaining 3 items, this one, this one, and this one, those are labels. Right? So first of all, I want to make sure that those labels are the same size as the text boxes. So I'll just take this label, copy and paste it. And the first thing I better do with this label is to remove the auto size feature. So let me set that to false. Let me make sure that the width of this label is the same as the width of the text box. So change that, there we go. And then I also want to make sure that the height is the same. So let me just move this up here. Yep, that's the same height, and then the same bottom. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to right here. There we go. All right, this has to have a border style of fixed 3D. So I'll select the fixed 3D. And let me take a look at the document here. It looks like when the items are entered, they're going to be on the left-hand side. They're left aligned, so I can leave that as is. That's fine. I think that's it. Of course, the label's not going to have anything inside of it, so let me get rid of the text property. And okay, so now I can just take this, copy and paste it, put another one right next to this label, and then copy and paste that one, put another one right here. Okay, so now we have all of our labels set. Now I can go ahead and take these items and arrange them so that they are right above the appropriate labels. So something like this, say for example. Actually, I think overtime pay can be moved over a little bit more. I think maybe regular pay too. Right there. There we go. Okay, so now I have these items. And again, I'm going to go back and forth here looking to see if this is similar. I guess I can move this up just a little bit. Something like that is okay. Is that hourly wage moved over correctly? Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. So I have that done. What else do I have now? Looks like I have a button that says calculate wage, and it looks like it spans across from here all the way to here, and it's a little bit bigger, something like this. And it says calculate wage. Okay, so let me change the text to calculate wage. And then I have a horizontal line here. You know that that's just simply a label, so I'll just take this label, say for example, copy and paste it. And well, the first thing I got to do is I got to change the auto size to false, and let me at least fix the width of the label to something like this. Let's change the back color to black. So black, there we go. And then I'll position the label, say for example, right about here. I can't close it all the way, so what I need to do is I need to go to the size property, change the height by double clicking on that, type 1, press enter, and there's the height. So let me go back to the form or to the handout. That's about right. And so the last thing to place is a 3D label down here, so I'll just take this label, copy and paste it, and make sure that the width is okay, something like this, and something like that. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm just eyeballing it anyway. So let's see, something like that. Let's see here. It looks like this is a little bit bigger than the height of this button here, so yeah, that's about right. All right, so let me just take this form. I'll reduce the size of the form to something like this. It looks like the graphical user interface is about the same as the handout, so I'm going to leave this as is. Let me go back over here and look at some of the different software requirements. Okay, so TXT first name, TXT last name, those are some examples of the different names for the controls. So I'll scroll back to the top. This one's supposed to be TXT first name. This text box is supposed to be TXT last name. This text box is supposed to be TXT hourly wage. This one is supposed to be TXT hours worked. Let's see here, what else do we have? We have LBL regular pay, LBL overtime pay, LBL total pay. Okay, so this label will be LBL regular pay. This next label will be LBL overtime pay. This label will be LBL total pay. This button obviously is going to be BTN calculate wage. And oh, here it abbreviates it to calc wage. Okay, so let me be consistent with my handout here. It says calc wage. All right. And then finally, this label down here, what is that supposed to be? That's supposed to be, oh goodness, I don't think I have anything down here. Okay, well, we can make something up here. That'll be LBL result, say for example. LBL result. All right, so let me make sure that all of my text boxes and labels have a name. So I'm just looking over here at the name property as I select these different items to make sure that they're labeled or that they're named appropriately. And it looks like they are. Okay, so I have finished the graphical user interface. Let me go ahead and close this. And I'm going to now double click on the BTN calculate wage button because this is where we're going to enter our code. Let me close the properties window or minimize it. And what do we have here in terms of the overall pseudocode? Okay, so I'm telling you or giving you an idea of how to approach this code. And here's the overall approach. But the first thing we need to do, of course, we need to do some declarations. So I'll put a comment over here, declarations. We're going to have to get the user input. And then we're going to do some calculation. And then, of course, we're going to output the results. Now, you've probably noticed that this seems to be a very common approach, right? And in most programs, this is in fact the case. You're going to declare stuff, and then you're going to get the user input. You're going to maybe manipulate the data, do some calculation, and then you output your results. So this is, in general, a very common approach for our code. Well, the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to develop variables to be able to capture the person's first name, last name, the hourly wage, and the hours worked. And so I think I give you some of those, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, here they are. So here are some variables that you need to create, right? Like reg pay, overtime pay, total pay, hours worked, and hourly wage. All right, so let's do that over here. So I'm going to dim reg pay as double. And then dim overtime pay as double. Dim total pay as double. Okay, so I've declared those. Next I have hours worked and hourly wage. Okay, so dim hours worked as double. And then hourly wage as double. Okay, that's all that I've created here. I guess I could declare a variable to obtain the person's first name and last name. I don't have to do this. Maybe I should do it just to give you an example of what to do. So, for example, first name as string, dim last name as string as well. All right, so that takes care of the declarations. Now let's get the user data. So, for example, the hours worked, right? That's going to be obtained from, well, first let me convert to double. We're going to get that from the text box, hours worked. And for the hourly wage, we're going to get that, after I convert it to a double, from the text box, hourly wage, again from the text property. So let me make sure I go over these two so that you understand. We're going to take the text from this text box called hours worked. We're going to convert it to a double, and then we're going to assign it to the variable hours worked. So this is text. We convert it to a number, and now we put it into a number. Same thing over here. We'll take the text from the txt hourly wage text box, convert that to a number, and assign that to hourly wage. All right, well, now that we have that, let's go ahead and obtain the first and the last name. So the first name is going to be from the text box first name dot text. Last name is going to be from the txt last name dot text. Now, you may be asking, wait a minute, how come we don't see convert? Well, because first name is a string. Last name is a string. String and text, those two words are synonymous. Now, you can't type text here, right? There's no such thing as type first name as text. In Visual Basic, they call them strings. So string and text, for all intents and purposes, they're the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the text from this first name text box, and we're putting it into something that holds text. So no conversion is necessary, in other words. All right, so I think we've obtained all the data that we need from the user. And now let's go ahead and begin our calculation of overtime and regular pay and total pay. Now you'll notice that from the handout it says to use this particular pseudocode. So if the hours worked is less than or equal to 40. Okay, so if the hours worked is less than or equal to 40, then, okay, watch what happens when I press enter. I press enter and now my if block is created for me. Isn't that nice? So again, let me make sure I have done this correctly here. It says if hours worked is less than or equal to 40. Well, that's what this is, right? If it's less than or equal to 40. By the way, this would be a mistake. You can't say equals or less than. It doesn't work that way in Visual Basic. It has to be this way. It has to be either greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. Okay, if hours worked is less than or greater than 40. If that's a true statement, then what? Your regular pay is going to equal to hours worked times hourly wage. Okay, so the regular pay is going to equal to hours worked times hourly wage. And what else do we have? Overtime pay is equal to 0. Okay, so overtime pay will be equal to 0. Now, if this is not the case, if hours worked is not less than or equal to 40, in other words, what if I worked 55 hours? What if I worked 60 hours? Well, this would not be a true statement. Well, if that's not a true statement, then regular pay and overtime pay are going to be something completely different. Well, regular pay in this case is going to be what? Well, it says here, else regular pay is equal to 40 hours times hourly wage. Okay, so 40 hours times hourly wage. And your overtime pay is going to equal to, well, let's see here. It tells me right here, hours worked minus 40 in parentheses. Hours worked minus 40 in parentheses times time and a half times hourly wage. Right? Isn't that what I have over here on the handout? Hours worked minus 40 times time and a half times hourly wage. Okay, so now I have two different options. Remember, the if statement is going to either evaluate to true or false. If this evaluates to true, then you do this. If this evaluates to false, then you do this. So do this, else, if it's false, do this. Right? Only one of these. Either these two are going to be executed or these two are executed, but not a total of all four. Right? Only two of them. If this is true, these. If this is false, these. Okay. All right, so that is our if statement. Once we have determined the total pay, or the regular pay and the overtime pay, now we can calculate our total pay. Our total pay is equal to regular pay plus overtime pay, like that. That's it. Now, let me make a mistake. I don't know if I want to call it a mistake, but let me do something that perhaps is redundant, not very elegant here. Let me cut this and put this here, and I'm also going to put this here. All right. If this is true, then calculate all this, and by the way, total pay is this. If this is false, calculate these. Oh, and by the way, total pay is this. Do you see how this is exactly the same as this? That's kind of redundant. If that is in fact the case, then usually what you can do is you could pull that out of the if block statement and just put it at the end. So in other words, if I do this, let me fix this stylistically here. Here we go. Total pay is always going to be equal to overtime pay plus regular pay, right? It's always going to be equal to the addition of these two. Well, if that's the case, it's not necessary for me to have it inside of the if statement and also inside of the else statement. It'll just simply go to, it'll evaluate these two and then determine overtime pay, or it will evaluate these two and again still evaluate what total pay is. All right, so in other words, pulling that total pay is equal to regular pay plus overtime pay, that's not necessary to have that inside of each of the different statements like I did before. Okay, we are finished with this. We can now display the output. For the label regular pay, text, that is going to equal to, well, it's going to equal to regular pay, right? But here's the problem. Regular pay is a number. And remember, I said that I wanted you to have it in the currency style. So it should say dollar symbol, dot, and then two numbers after the decimal point. Well, how do I make this thing currency style? Here's how you do it. Dot, toString, and then parentheses, capital C, close quote, close parentheses. So what this C represents is currency. It's saying put this thing in the currency format. We're going to do the same thing for overtime pay. So that's going to equal to overtime pay, but we want this thing in the currency format. And we're also going to do the same thing for the total pay. Again, that's going to equal to total pay, but we want this in the currency format. All right. And then the very last thing to do will be to output to the result label the text property. And that's this guy down here. Right. Here's where we're going to say something like, hey, Robert, your total pay is, and then whatever his total pay is. All right. So that label will be assigned something. So it's going to be the person's first name. Well, where is the person's first name? Well, we have it over here, first name. So first name. And then I'm going to say plus. Now, actually, let me do it the old way, and then I'll do it, I shouldn't say the old way. Let me just use the concatenation operator. Here's what we're going to do. This ampersand is called the concatenation operator. So first name concatenated, which means just simply to put together with, right? So we're going to put this together with something else. Quote, comma, space. Your total pay is space, close quote. All right. Right now, the way I have it, the person's first name is going to be connected or combined or concatenated is the 50-cent word with this string. A string is defined by something that begins with a quotation mark, as you see here, and it ends with a quotation mark. So everything in it, for example, this comma, the space, Y-O-U-R, space, T-O-T-A-L, so forth and so on, everything in between the quotation marks will be displayed on the label. The quotation marks themselves will not be in the actual output. Okay. So I have this first name, and your total pay is. Let me also concatenate that with whatever the total pay is, right? So the total pay, well, that's going to be total pay, but remember, this has to be in the form of a string. So I'm going to use the toString function, and I want this in the form of a currency. And press enter. Well, let's see what happens. So let me run the code. And give it a second. Here we go. So let me start typing in data. So Robert Solis, hourly wage. Let's say that I make $10 an hour, and I worked 40 hours. So if I click calculate wage, let's see if this is right. Regular pay is 10 times 40 is 400. Good. My overtime pay is 0. And the total pay is the addition of these two, so that's correct. Robert, your total pay is $400. So far, so good. What if I worked 41 hours? That means one of those hours is overtime. So let me click Calculate Wage. And so that's going to be 400. One of those hours is overtime, so that means 1 times time and a half times 10. So that's going to be $15. So far, so good. This plus this is 415. Robert, your total pay is 415. That's good. What if I decide to be a diehard and I work 60 hours? And so that means 20 of those hours are going to be overtime. So 40 times 10 is 400. And then 20 of those hours times 10 times time and a half is 300. So that'll be $700 an hour. Robert, your total pay is 700. So it looks like everything works. And of course, what if someone's a part-timer, like they only work 25 hours? Well, that's okay. Your 10 times 25 is 250. Your overtime pay is 0. Total pay is 250. The message works. And of course, it's going to work for not just simply whole numbers. It'll work for real numbers as well. So what if I get 1075? And what if I work 25 and a half hours, right? Everything will work accordingly. All right, so I think that that is it. So let me close this program. And again, I don't need this output panel. Go back over here to the PDF document. All right, so I think that's it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this has been helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.